She smashed one soldier's face to the ground, and something gave a sickening crack. While the others were still recoiling, Lizzie lunged at the next and tore out his throat with her teeth. They were all panicking, trying to react to her moving even faster than before, but it was too late. Lizzie had picked up her axe. Oh crap, do they know who did it? They say it... I can't believe this, but they said it was some girl from her school. She stabbed 2 of the police officers, like with a knife. They were rushed to the hospital. Whoa, what about her? They shot her? Seriously? Or at least that's what I heard. I just got here in time to see the body before they covered it up, but I didn't see the violent part. How terrible. Thanks for telling me, though. His classmate went back to staring at the crime scene, so he let himself drift back to Lizzie. Her eyes had grown serious, so he followed her as she put some distance between them and the crowd. Normally, I would have guessed it was you, but... No, it wasn't. I would kill anyone who got between us, anyone you wanted me to, but I wasn't involved with this. Do you have some idea, though? There was another girl. Not like me, but similar. In our school? Really? Her mother knew Abby. They got kicked out of Koitek program together. There it is! It was another girl. This kind of was hinted in the ending that we got, but this kind of like, is gonna shed the entire light to it. Okay. For the same reason? Being pregnant? Oh, you've got to be kidding me. I never liked her. We never really spoke, but I think she could have been capable of this. Then what do we do? I think we should go. Stay away from this. I'm not arguing with you there. She went with him to his door and he kissed her goodnight, but they both knew that things hadn't been entirely settled. Not yet. He tried to watch the news, but it was all meaningless speculation about what could have caused the girl to murder her boyfriend so brutally. He had to turn it off only after a few minutes. Though there were still more questions, when he went to bed, he found they slipped away from him, and he fell asleep remarkably quick. That night, he had a dream that Lizzie had murdered both his classmates. He saw her standing over their torn open bodies covered in their blood. She saw him and bared her teeth in a smile, and then kissed him. And then, it wasn't a bad dream. Oh, it's fine. As long as the killer kisses me, it's all good. The next morning, John woke feeling the best he'd ever felt in a long time. He had to remind himself that most people would be in mourning over the 2 murders the night before. After school, he got a call to go to Mrs. Smith's office. He considered just not going at all. He wanted to spend the evening with Lizzie. But the note seemed urgent. When he arrived, he found Mrs. Smith with a rather grim expression on her face. John, I hope you're doing alright after the incident. I understand that the boy who died was a friend of yours. It felt like an eternity ago, but he realized that it was more or less true. He shook his head slowly. An old friend, but yeah, it's hard to believe. Well, I thought we should have a conversation. It's okay, Mrs. Smith. I feel like I'm doing okay. There are other students who probably need more help than I do. I'm afraid I must insist. Lie down. He almost defied her then, but in the end, decided to do as she asked. Therapy sessions always made him feel better. It couldn't hurt. No reason to draw attention to himself or Lizzie, after all. Alright, what do you want to talk about? My feelings about the accident? No, there's no time for that today. Huh? I need you to relax, immediately. John began to settle back onto the couch, letting her words become a meaningless hum. And for the first time, he realized how wrong that was. He lay there, apparently relaxed as he tried to think about their past therapy sessions. The more he thought about them, the more he realized an ominous pattern. He could barely remember any details. They would chat for a while, and then the rest of their session was just a white haze. Ready? I need you to remain calm and come with me. She spoke flatly, as she expected to be obeyed without question. What was this, some sort of hypnosis? Well, realizing she might get upset, John slowly got to his feet. He wasn't sure how he was supposed to act, but he settled for straightforward obedience. Delayed response. Have you been taking your Paxilene lately? He gave a half shrug and just stared back at her. Mrs. Smith frowned, then shook her head and gestured for him to follow. I suppose it doesn't matter. All of this is normal. You want to follow me and await instructions. John had no choice but to do as she left the building. But inside, he was panicking. What was he supposed to do now? What the hell's happening? Was I being drugged by her the entire time, or what too? What? Mrs. Smith, you're part of Koitek too? If he'd seen Lizzie, he would have begged her to follow with his eyes. But he didn't see a hint of her, not even watching her from around the corner. They walked outside into the parking lot, where Mrs. Smith opened the passenger seat door of her car and gestured for him to get in. He stepped inside and tried to take the tension off his face, instead just staring forward. They didn't drive very far, just to a warehouse a few blocks away from the school. It looked half abandoned, but when their car approached, the gates and then one of the garage doors opened for her. Inside, there were multiple armed men in gray body armor. He didn't see any insignias on them, or any indication of who they worked for. Why don't you take a seat, John? He got out of the car to obey, only then spotting the blank white table and 2 chairs placed in the center of the warehouse floor. Sitting down, he tried to stare blankly at the table, even as he analyzed what he held. There were 2 metal briefcases, and just to make things strange, a box of surgical gloves. Remain calm, but focus on me, John. You're aware of your surroundings, but willing to accept what I say. Huh? Not the most elegant of lies, but it seemed to work. Mrs. Smith barely even glanced at him, instead pulling a pair of surgical gloves. We brought you here for your own protection, John. I'm afraid that your girlfriend is not who you believe she is. Lizzie? What's the problem? Is she okay? I'm afraid not. Not even close. Years ago, Koitek was an innovative company on the very forefront of biochemical research, but I'm afraid some of the company's founders were less than ethical. What does any of this have to do with us? Shut up, I'm getting there. Wow, okay. Testing standards were rather lax. In particular, there was a certain test of mood drug that should probably have never been certified. Dozens of lawsuits were settled for families that suffered in the test. That is right and good. Koitek acknowledges the mistakes of the past. Unfortunately, some of those mistakes were more enduring. 4 pregnant women participated in tests without disclosing their pregnancies. They were, of course, removed as soon as the condition was realized, but it was too late for the embryos. One became completely non-viable and was stillborn. There's conflicting evidence around the second, but it appears the boy may have committed suicide at a young age. But we were concerned with the last 2. One of them was the murderer who the police put down last night. And the last was Lizzie Dawes. Huh? You're saying Lizzie had some kind of condition? Early investigation suggested both girls turned out normal, so the matter was closed. But recent events make it seem very likely that both of them were deeply disturbed. I'll be blunt, the girl is not remotely stable. She's a danger to herself and others. Did they really think that would work? That he would just nod and accept the story with guards all around him armed like paramilitary forces? Then again, perhaps she was counting on her therapy to have a controlling effect. Either way, all he could do was keep up his act. There was no doubt truth in what she was saying, and he needed to learn more. Then, what do you want me to do? Why can't all your guards take care of it? John, we don't want to hurt the girl. Not at all. We want to help her. We would prefer she came in quietly. The implicit threat hung in the air, and John swallowed and nodded. Then what am I supposed to do? The girl trusts you. If you can administer a sedative to her, then we hope we can medicate her without any unnecessary struggling. Mrs. Smith opened the first metal case, showing him a number of syringes filled with disturbingly bright liquid. They look like chemicals that would melt metal, not ones that you should go into anyone's body. If you are receptive to our plan, we will provide you with a variety of options. We have extra strength sedatives here, for example. However, based on the incident yesterday, I personally believe we may need a more extreme option. I would advise you to use this one. Her fingers brushed the last syringe in the briefcase, one filled with a bright red liquid. This is a modified version of the chemical that Lizzie was exposed to in utero. Wouldn't that be really dangerous? Her body can... Wow, look at that smile. Oh, jeez. Her body can barely handle the level of exposure she already received. An additional dose would lock her down entirely. And you expect me to convince her to be injected with something like that? It does not need to be injected intravenously. Autopsy of the other girl indicates the chemicals has a substantial effect on muscle tissue, so an injection into any muscle will be effective. Autopsy. This was more of a conspiracy than he'd imagined, but there was no time to reel from that now. John simply nodded as if this was vaguely reasonable. Well, I want her to get help that she needs. Are you sure this won't hurt her? Let me be honest with you, John. There would likely be some pain for her as her body rejects the chemical. but it may be the only way to ensure that she harms no one and cooperates with treatment. I see. Smid, HQ hasn't responded. Damn it, we'll just proceed with the plan then. No, it's not that. We seem to have lost our connection. Then this case is completely under my authority. John, we're counting on you to end this without anyone getting hurt. I hope I can do that. You can, I'm sure of it. Then should I? He wasn't exactly sure what approach he was going to take, but then abruptly it didn't matter. Lizzie was in the warehouse and she winked at him. A second later, one of the soldiers fell into a gurgling cry. Everyone's eyes were drawn to him and the knife in his eye except for John, who looked in the other direction. Sliding up behind another of the soldiers, Lizzie drew her axe across his throat. Damn it, take her down! We need her alive! Unfortunately for the soldiers, Lizzie was under no such restrictions. She was enormously outnumbered, but she swept through the group, axe flashing brutally. They began using rubber bullets on her, and though some hit her, each other, a few managed to strike her. Lizzie slowed, faltered, and eventually they tackled her to the ground. John. She said his name only once while they wrestled her into the chair beside him, but it broke his heart. He wished he could do something, but he was helpless against trained soldiers. They had been cleverly concealed, but John realized that the chairs had sturdy straps behind to bind someone completely in place as they pinned Lizzie to her chair. He realized that they were coming for him the next second in panic, raising his hands. No, please, I'll cooperate, please. Don't hurt me. He's harmless. Stay there and shut up, John. Mrs. Smid walked to stand in front of Lizzie, staring down at her like she was a repulsive insect. If I had my way, we'd exterminated you already, but the board is apparently interested in what we might learn from you. Given your performance just now, it seems they were right. What are you gonna do to her? Is this some kind of super soldier program? Yeah, that's what it's looking like. To his surprise, Mrs. Smith laughed, loudly and apparently authentically. Don't be absurd, boy. Even if such a thing wasn't ridiculous, do you have any idea how destabilizing it would be? As she spoke, she put on a new pair of surgical gloves and opened the second metal case, filled with clear syringes. Mrs. Smith glanced at one calmly, squirting a bit of liquid out of the end. Mrs. Smith jabbed a needle into Lizzie's arm. She hissed and tried to break her bonds, but they stayed firm. Now, are you feeling more cooperative? Lizzie shot her a glare of pure malice. Mrs. Smith waited for a while, then frowned. Ineffective as I'd fear. Well, this is why we brought alternatives. Hold him. Too late, John realized that they were referring to him. Some of the remaining soldiers held him in place while Mrs. Smith approached and injected him with a second syringe. Instantly, his head was filled with a pitch-black fog. With it came pain and lethargy, rendering him nearly comatose in his chair. It took everything he had just to focus through the fog. Stop it! You see? The fixation of the boy is part of her insanity. I told you we could use him. Is she going to cooperate? Well, girl, will you? John wanted to tell her not to give in, but his jaw didn't seem to work. He couldn't even twitch when Mrs. Smith came closer and injected him with something else. This one took away the pain, but the world began spinning violently around him. The black fog in his mind swirled together with the world around him, and he could feel himself being dragged down into an incomprehensive haze. Staying focused on reality was becoming difficult, a ghost of everyone spiraling out from their bodies. Stop! You're killing him! No, I have no intention of doing that. This will already be enough of a mess. We can't afford any more legal conflicts. But with enough of these, I can make him completely compliant. He'll say anything we want him to say, and everything that he is will cease to be. And then suddenly, it all stopped. It was as if he stood in the eye of a hurricane, swirling chaos all around him, but the moment perfectly still. And in that moment, he saw a fever dream of fracturing time. In that moment, he knew that if he gave in, they would die. If Lizzie gave them what they wanted, they would die. Everywhere he turned, death. He knew he was probably hallucinating, but he still searched for some path that he didn't end in death, yet he found nothing. His mind grew lighter, and he could feel himself coming out of the stillness, back through the chaos. He knew that unless he used his moment of clarity to do something, he would be lost. But what? There was death on every side, and even outside his hallucination, what could he possibly do? He was weak, Lizzie was trapped, the enemy was all around him. Then one death stood out to him. He caught only insane flashes of things he couldn't understand. A glimpse of a willow tree, and then death. But unlike all the other points of light dancing in his vision, that he was sure were hallucinations, this one felt real, heavy. It was death, but not death like this. He had no idea what it meant. It was probably all his mind breaking apart, but he still lunged for that final death. He came back to himself, reeling but somehow standing. His words was cloaked in dark fog. His world was cloaked in dark fog. But he could see enough. Everything he had seen moments before seemed like madness to him, but abruptly he realized that he needed to do. Not even thinking about it, he lunged away from the soldiers towards the table, grabbed a bright red syringe, and plunged it into Lizzie's shoulder. They wrestled him away the next second, even the soldiers taken aback that he had moved like that. Mrs. Smith stared at him in shock. "Are you insane?" Maybe you are. Maybe part of my mistake was thinking you were normal in the first place. Well, I'll fix that mistake soon. That chemical was valuable. You're gonna regret wasting it." But not as much as she was gonna regret ignoring Lizzie. As the chemical pumped through her body, Lizzie became strangely calm. Her eyes were glassy and empty, but that didn't mean she was sedated. Eyes still blank, Lizzie calmly tore through her restraints and rose to her feet. What? How is she? Lizzie dissolved into a stream of erratic movements almost faster than the eye could follow. Slumping back into his chair, John could only watch. She smashed one soldier's face to the ground, and something gave a sickening crack. While the others were still recoiling, Lizzie lunged at the next and tore out his throat with her teeth. They were all panicking, trying to react to her moving even faster than before, but it was too late. Lizzie had picked up her axe. Watching her, John couldn't help but feel that she was strangely beautiful. Her erratic movements smoothed out, becoming a deadly dance that sent sprays of blood away from her almost elegantly. Through it all, she laughed. Yet, it wasn't a laugh of desperation. There was a savage joy there that he was happy to hear. What had possessed him to inject her with that chemical? Thinking about it now, it seemed an act of madness. But on some level, he had been certain that her body hadn't rejected the drug. It had adapted, absorbed it, become stronger. And so the second dose had just multiplied the effect. Soon all the soldiers were dead. Mrs. Smith stared in horror, then managed to pull herself back together. "That's enough! Do you realize he's seeing all of this? Your little fetish is going to..." Her head tumbled from her shoulders. John blinked in surprise as he realized that Lizzie had literally decapitated the woman with her axe in a single blow. And then Lizzie was still. The blood slowly dripping down her body, she stood not far away from him. Axe held loosely, laughter gone, just standing, watching him. He realized that he thought the chemical had increased her inner strength, but it had no doubt magnified her mental instability as well. He couldn't know what she was thinking, but he could see turmoil in her eyes. All John wanted to do was lie down and sleep. Maybe let her kill him, it didn't matter. He had pushed himself too far to care. And yet he saw pain in her eyes, and he remembered how many times he had felt the same way and wished that anyone would help him. Somehow, through the pain and dizziness and grayness consuming him, John stood up. He took several uneven steps over to Lizzie, then wrapped his arms around her and held her close. She was still for a moment, then gripped him back, so tightly it was almost painful, and with her axe dangerously close to his head. But he didn't let go. John wasn't sure how long they stayed like that. Gradually, he seemed to come back to himself, the chemical mess he'd been injected with fading away, and leaving him with nothing but his own depression. That was his. He knew with a heavy certainty. There was no conspiracy there, no easy solution, it was something he could live with. But he wouldn't live with it alone. Lizzie shifted in his arms, raising her face enough to kiss him. Sometime later, they both parted. He felt heavy, but he could move. Something vicious still lurked in Lizzie's eyes, but it was the viciousness he had come to love. "Are you okay, John?" "You're asking me that. I'm fine. Whatever they did to me wasn't permanent." "What they did to me was... I can't describe it. Do you hate me? You've seen what I really am now. I'll never be normal." "And I don't want you to be." "John, please tell me you love me." "I love you, Lizzie. I always will." "Yeah, I love you so much. I would slaughter every single person in this world just to be with you a second longer." "Yeah, you've kind of proven that." "Well, let's hope you can get a better rate than 1 second for total genocide." Oh my goodness, God. It's so morbidly comedic, you know? Lizzie gave a brief little laugh. "Yeah, I know, it's morbidly comedic and both of you are insane, so yeah, it's funny." She sounded almost normal for a moment, and that single moment helped both of them return to themselves a little. This is really a mess.
We'll have to leave. If we stay here too long, they'll find us.
Is there any hope? I think they contacted Koitek headquarters about us.
No, they didn't. I destroyed their communication system first.
Whoa, you're on top of everything. And tell her she's like a super intelligent mutant. Oh, the comps? Now I took care of that. Koitek, I killed everybody, it's fine. She gave him a nod grim, a mix of nervousness and vicious satisfaction.
I wanted to come after you right away, throw myself at them until they were all dead and you were safe. But then I remembered all my time with you. I want to be with you forever, John. We have to make that happen.
But how? All of this?
It will hurt them too. They're already under government scrutiny, and the way they work with local police is definitely corrupt. They can't afford to push on this.
But they couldn't forgive us for this.
Then we'll just have to make sure they never find out, don't we?
She smiled, and he smiled back. Lizzie extended her hand, still covered in blood, and they held hands while they set up about cleaning up the bodies. And now we're cleaning. What? Okay, first and foremost, we're cleaning up bodies and dispersing of evidence now. Well, you're like criminal masterminds if we're able to hide all these bodies too.
John, are you still with me?
Yeah, just thinking about everything that happened when we met.
Oh yeah, so much emotion. But it was like living in a movie, wasn't it?
I've never seen you kill that many people before.
Oh, you're thinking about the time you injected me. Always such a romantic.
When we first met, you said you found me. It wasn't only that, I found you. If I hadn't, I don't know if I would have survived. I certainly would have never have discovered all this. We're surrounded by so much beauty, aren't we?
Yes, I never imagined that a singular focus could expand so much. But now, I'm glad we're alone now, John.
I made the right choice with you. My world was so gray, and now...
I'm so glad I found you.
Lizzie, do I need to say it?
No, I already know. But you can say it one more time if you want.
Well, there it is, the true ending. Oh my god. Choose your title. What the hell is this? Living Tree. We're happy now. Well, he no longer sees in gray. Koitek was evil. She murdered a lot of people. Bad people, but she murdered a lot of people nonetheless. We destroyed evidence, destroyed bodies. Wow. Well, there you guys have it. That's going to be the true ending of Crimson Gray. We learned everything else with it for sure, and good god, it's a crazy-ass ride. There is a sequel, as I mentioned. I'm not sure what goes on in the sequel, but if there's enough interest and you guys want to see that as well, I could probably check it out too. Let me know in the comments if leaving a thumbs up. This was originally going to be one video, but looking at my timer now, I've sat here and I've talked for an hour and 20 minutes, so that's the reason why my throat's killing me at the moment. So I'm going to probably end up cutting this into 2 videos as opposed to just one as I originally thought. It was like maybe like 40 minutes or 45. I probably would have done one, but it's an hour and 20 minutes. That's a very long video. So I'll cut it up into 2 parts for you guys at the very least. My throat's killing me. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I will catch you next time.